Hello, welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Thursday, August 10th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. We've got a lot to get into today on the podcast. It is, in fact, Thursday, August 10th. One more day, and then we hit the weekend tomorrow on Friday. We've got a lot to get into today on the show. If you're a Yankee fan today, you're waking up disappointed yet again. If you're a New York Met fan, you get up today and you won a series for the first time in a very long time as they get the job done against the Chicago Cubs last night, 4-3, even with some bullpen issues, a little bit of a malfunction there late with Ottavino in the ninth. They were still able to get the job done, still able to secure the victory. So the Mets get the job done. They get a series win. Doesn't mean anything, really, because they're out of it. But, it's a nice win for them. Nice series win against a Cubs team that is fighting for a playoff spot. If you're a New York Yankees fan, what can we say? Severino goes out there. The Yankees, for some reason, think one inning in the bullpen's going to benefit. It didn't. He was out there, got crushed, let up a homer to a guy with a .220 batting average and OPS in the 500s. The Yankees lose 9-2 to the White Sox. They got crushed. They lose 2 of 3. They went into the White Sox this season, played a series at home and a series in Chicago, and lost both those series. And the White Sox have been one of the most embarrassing teams in baseball, and the Yankees have found new levels of low. So, look, I'm not going to get too much into the Yankees today. They're pathetic. What more do I have to say? What more do I have to rant? I'm honestly tired of ranting. I'm tired of getting frustrated over this New York Yankee team because the bottom line is this. They're not going anywhere this year. We hear that Hal Steinbrenner is probably not going to fire Brian Cashman. Boone might be utilized as a scapegoat. But even if we bring in another manager, he's probably not going to do a whole lot because Cashman and this organization is going to do the same thing in the offseason in terms of not acquire any legit talent. They're going to go along with their same plan of how they acquire talent in terms of evaluating players. They're going to continue taking an analytical approach. They're not going to be willing to take a step back and bring up young guys and revamp this roster. They're just going to go for it again next year, even though this team's not anywhere close to winning, and it would be better to take a step back and retool for a year rather than go after it again next season. So this team, look, we are staring into the abyss of nothing as a Yankee fan. We are in a dark tunnel right now. There is no light at the end of the tunnel currently, right? As Jets fans, we were in a dark tunnel for a while. Finally, we saw some light at the end of the tunnel. Finally, it seems like we've hit that light because we should have a very successful season coming up this year with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. As for the Yankees, we're right in the middle of this dark tunnel. There is no light at the end. There isn't. There's nothing to be hopeful for. Maybe a couple prospects in the farm system, but as long as Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone are here, or as long as one of the two of them are here, this team's not going to go anywhere. Brian Cashman is not a good GM. The league has caught up to him. The Yankees last night, again, thought that they were smarter than everybody else. Oh, let's put Sevy in the bullpen for an inning. What is that going to do? What is Severino in the bullpen for one inning really going to do? He needs a complete reset. He's toast. His ERA is 8.06. He's got the worst ERA in baseball. He's the worst pitcher in baseball. One inning in the bullpen isn't going to do him anything. And that showed last night. So they lose 2 of 3 against the White Sox. They get a much-needed day off today. It's gone so bad as a Yankee fan. I like the days off. I usually don't like that. I like the nights that the Yankees play, and that's the beauty of 162. There's games on every night. But I actually look forward now more to the days off of this Yankee stretch the rest of August and in September. Thankfully in September we'll have the Jets to distract me because once the Jets are on, we're full-blown football mode, especially here on the pod. The Yankees probably at that point will be 9 games out of a wild card spot, and they'll just be a matter of time until they get mathematically eliminated. But, you look forward to the days off now as a Yankee fan. You do, because what is there to look forward to in the games? Nothing. So, Yankees get the day off today. Mets as well, despite a nice series win yesterday. They'll be back tomorrow, welcoming the Braves to town for 4 games in 3 days. I think they have a doubleheader on Saturday against the Braves. So, a good series win for the Mets because you're probably not going to do a whole lot against Atlanta. So, we'll see how it all plays out. They're coming up with the Mets and the Braves. But we got a lot to get into today. We got a little bit of baseball, and we got a little bit of basketball as well. later on. So we'll start here with the big story in the MLB world. Michael Lorenzen last night of the Philadelphia Phillies threw a no-hitter, no-hit the Washington Nationals. So we'll get into that, break it all down. Talked about the Phillies a little bit earlier in the week about the whole Trey Turner standing ovation, so we'll get into a little bit more Phillies baseball as well today with the no-hitter from Michael Lorenzen last night. So congrats to him, the third no-hitter this season, and the second no-hitter in a matter of about 8 days, as Framber Valdez threw one on August 1st. So we'll get into the Michael Lorenzen no-hitter. We'll get into what it means for the Phillies. And the Phillies are riding high right now. They are hot, and they could potentially, in my opinion, make a deep run to the postseason. Not just because of the no-hitter last night, but what we've seen out of this team, recently with their hot stretch of baseball. 7 of their last 10 have been W's. So we'll get into that. We'll also get into a little bit of basketball. Josh Hart and the New York Knicks have agreed on a 4-year, $81 million extension. The New York Knicks lock up their most crucial trade deadline acquisition last season after he opted in earlier this summer. They get a deal done on an extension, a much-needed deal done for the New York Knicks as they continue to build upon the depth of that Knicks team, and Josh Hart is a big piece of it. So we'll get into that as well later on, and we'll get you ready tonight. No Yankees and Mets on. So there's not a whole lot to get ready tonight. Yeah, Jets-Panthers second joint practice got postponed, unfortunately. Jets will practice today, but there won't be any joint practice today, which is unfortunate. So not a whole lot going on tonight. But I did rewatch Hard Knocks yesterday, so that was good. And I was ready to run through a wall again, rewatching Hard Knocks already. So if you haven't watched Hard Knocks yet, definitely go check it out because it's out there and it's awesome. So we'll start off today with a little bit of baseball, and it's funny because I'll start with this. So I obviously fantasy baseball league. I'm 12-5 right now. I'm currently losing in this week's matchup. I'm fighting for the 1 seed right now. I'm a lot better at fantasy baseball than I am fantasy football. I have not had much success at all in fantasy football over the last couple of years. I get to usually I can get into the playoffs, but I usually don't go anywhere. I'll usually lose first round. I haven't really won I think I've won once in fantasy football. I've never, 3 years of fantasy baseball, I've gone to the championship 2 of the 3 years. So it's been a lot of fun. But yesterday, I had Mackenzie Gore going for the Nationals. I had Phillies Michael Lorenzen I didn't have Michael Lorenzen going for the Phillies, but I had Mackenzie Gore going for the Nationals against the Phillies. And it's funny because if you would have told me yesterday, hey, there's going to be a guy from the Phillies-Nationals game that's going to throw a no-hitter, I would have gotten hyped up because that's a chance there for me, Mackenzie Gore, who I had going to my fantasy lineup, to go out there and pitch a no-hitter. Obviously didn't happen. Mackenzie Gore ended up getting rocked. He got me -5 points. So it's unfortunate because if I had the other pitcher pitching yesterday, I probably would have got about 40 points out of Michael Lorenzen because that's about what you get for a no-hitter. Other than the Mackenzie Gore, who allowed 6 runs on 2 homers, was getting rocked yesterday, just like Trevor Williams got rocked the day before. Josiah Gray pitched pretty well, but just like most of the Phillies pitcher has gotten rocked this year against the Phillies, Mackenzie Gore did that last night. So unfortunate from my perspective because if only the other pitcher on the other side, if only Mackenzie Gore could have been the one that throws the no-hitter last night over Michael Lorenzen, I probably would have been 40 points better today, and I probably would have been winning by about 30 as opposed to losing by 5. So anyway, that is my fantasy baseball rant to start up the show. But it was a great outing last night for Michael Lorenzen as the Phillies get the job done 7-0 against the Washington Nationals. They'll play the final game of the 4-game set today in Philly. The Phillies have now taken 2 of the first 3. They split the doubleheader yesterday, got the job done last night. But Lorenzen yesterday was dominant. He improves to 7-7 on the season. He threw obviously a complete game, 9-inning no-hitter, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. He did it in 124 pitches, 76 strikes, and his ERA for the season now is 3.23. And the Phillies obviously acquired him at the deadline from the Detroit Tigers. He was an all-star this season for the Tigers, put together a pretty good season with the Tigers. He had a 3.58 ERA in 18 starts, 5-7 record, a whip of 1.10. Didn't get a whole lot of help from the Tigers in terms of run support. That's why the record looked like it did. But you've seen him now in his 2 starts from Philly. He's been a completely different player. And you've got to give a ton of credit to the Phillies front office for getting the job done in acquiring this guy at the deadline. Recognizing, hey, there is a starting pitching need. We also would love to add him to a rotation that already includes Aaron Nola, who's had a little bit of down year, has gotten killed by the long ball, but Zach Wheeler, Taijuan Walker, who's had a little bit of an up and down season, but a solid year for him, who signed obviously the contract in the offseason from the Mets going over to the Phillies. And then you add Michael Lorenzen to the back end of that rotation. He's been great. 2 starts in, has the no-hitter, ERA at 1.06, but it wasn't even last night's game. You look at his first game as a Philly against the Marlins on the road in a 4-2 victory. He went out there through 8 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, allowed 1 homer, a walk, and 5 strikeouts. So in his 2 starts as a Philly pitcher, since joining the Phillies, I should say, at the deadline, 17 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, 1 homer, 5 walks, 10 strikeouts, and an ERA of 1.06, and 1 no-hitter. He has given the Phillies 17 innings in 2 games. He gave him an inning shy of a complete game in his first start, and he gave him a no-hitter last night. I don't quite know how many other guys have done right when they've joined teams, but this has got to be one of the best starts you've seen from a guy who's come over at the deadline as a pitcher. To give you a no-hitter in his second start as a Philly, and most importantly, his first start at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia. I mean, you've hit this out of the park so far through the first 2 outings. He's given you length, he's given you a no-hitter, and he's given you 2 wins against a Marlins team that's currently in the last playoff spot in the National League, and he got the job done against a national team that's not very good, but that's what you're supposed to do against not very good teams, is beat them, and beat them bad. And you did that last night, even though obviously the headline is the no-hitter, but the Nationals put up 7 runs. 6 of those came in the first inning. 3 of those came in the first. They hit well off of Mackenzie Gore early last night. They gave run support to Lorenzen, and they got the job done. Overall, Phillies had 7 runs on 8 hits. Nationals, obviously, zeros across the board. No runs, hits, or errors last night. To give you some numbers, 322 no-hitters all time. That was the 322nd. That is the 14th no-hitter in Phillies history. The first no-hitter since 2015 when Cole Hamels threw one on the road in Chicago at Wrigley Field's friendly confines on July 25th, 2015. I was about to say 2025. On July 5th, 2015, in a 5-0 win over the Cubs. That was the last time the Phillies threw a no-hitter in their franchise history. Obviously, the 14th overall. And I believe this has got to be the first time a guy has thrown it in his second start in his first home start. To throw a no-hitter is something you don't see very often. Phillies improved to 63 and 52 on the year. This is the 3rd no-hitter this season. So we've actually seen a lot. After starting the year slow on no-hitters and perfect games, because it has been a slow year to start. Like through month of April and May, there was nothing. And then you had the Domingo Germán perfect game. And since July 8th, you've had 3 no-hitters in a month span. So there went from 0 no-hitters through the first 3 months of the season. April, May, July. You want to count the 1 day in March that they played, go ahead, count it. Through those first 3 months, though, no no-hitters, 1 perfect game. You go into July 8th, when the first no-hitter of the season was thrown, and now August 9th, you've had 3 no-hitters in a month and a day span. So no-hitters have been piling up a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if you see at least 1 more the rest of the year. There seems to be recently about 3-4 every season, and we've seen an uptick recently. But it is the 3rd no-hitter this season, and the 3 are obviously Lorenzen last night against the Nationals on August 9th in the 7-0 victory. The other no-hitter came on August 1st, which was Framber Valdez, who got the job done against the Guardians. So that was 8 days ago. 8 days ago, which exactly 1 week ago yesterday, well, 1 week ago on August 8th, rather. So 1 week ago Tuesday was when Valdez pitched the no-hitter against the Guardians. Lorenzen 2 days later, or two days from the official week, a day later, which was obviously Tuesday, yesterday on Wednesday, pitched the no-hitter. 8 days later, I should say, Lorenzen throws the no-hitter against the Nationals. So you've seen now 2 no-hitters in the span of 8 days. And then the other no-hitter came in July 8th. Alex Lange, Jason Foley, Matt Manning got the job done against the Blue Jays. So it was a combined no-hitter. So you've had 3 no-hitters. 2 of them have been complete no-hitters. Framber Valdez, obviously, against the Guardians, and Lorenzen last night. And then you had the combined no-hitter from the Tigers, which is Matt Manning, Alex Lange, and then Jason Foley, who got the job done on July 8th in a 2-0 victory over the Blue Jays. So those have been your 3 no-hitters this year. And it's funny because the Phillies have actually had a lot of bad no-hitter luck. Because not only have they haven't had a no-hitter in about 8 years from July 28th, because it was from July 25th, 2015. It's been 8 years and about a month since they've thrown a no-hitter. Not only has it been that long, but they last season had 2 no-hitters thrown against them. And one of those came in the World Series, which completely changed the trajectory of that World Series against the Astros. They were combined no-hitter against the Astros in the World Series. And then if you remember earlier in the year, they were combined no-hitter against the Mets at Citi Field. So they got no-hit twice last year, haven't thrown a no-hitter in 8 years, got no-hit in the postseason, in the World Series. So the luck has not been on their side when it comes to no-hitters recently. But last night, first start at home for Michael Lorenzen, second start overall since becoming a Philly. The luck switches to their side, and they get the first no-hitter since 2015. And look, I mean, I talk about, the National League is wide open when you look at it. Because outside of the Braves, and you could probably say the Dodgers too, those are like the 2 dominant teams. The AL Central, or the NL Central, you really don't know how it's going to play out. I mean, the Reds might win that division. I mean, there's a good chance the Reds, Cubs, Brewers all have a chance of winning the division. Brewers currently hold that spot in the division, but the Cubs and the Reds are right behind them at 2.5 games back. You look at the AL wildcard or the NL wildcard standings, it's wide open. I mean, the Diamondbacks are 2.5 back. The Reds and the Cubs are a half game back. The Marlins, Giants, Phillies all currently hold the spots. Phillies are 3.5 up there in the first wild card spot. Giants are 2.5 up, second wild card spot, and then the Marlins currently hold the final wild card spot. But it is hectic. It is crazy, the wild card situation in the National League. And you've seen teams like the Diamondbacks have been sliding. The Reds haven't played well. They're 2-8 in their last 10. The Cubs obviously just got done losing a series to the Mets, which is never a good thing, although they've been playing better baseball, but not against the Mets this last 3 days at Citi Field. But, I mean, it is wide open in the National League, and you got to look at it, that wild card. The Phillies are the best wild card team there. You can make a strong argument, and this isn't just off of last night, but it's the Braves, Dodgers, and Phillies are probably the 3 best teams in the National League. You can make that strong argument that's the case. Early in the season, you probably could have said, the Diamondbacks might be better because the Diamondbacks got off to that hot start, were playing really well, and they haven't been any good recently. On paper to start the year, you could have said San Diego. It's crazy to think when you look back at early in the season, when you looked at the National League and you said, man, you've got the Braves, you've got the Phillies, you've got the Mets, you've got the Dodgers, you've got the Padres. Like, you've got all these teams. You got the Padres and the Mets and all of these teams. Neither of them are in it. And it's the teams like the Cubs and the Reds and the Marlins that are all fighting for the final wild card spot, with the Mets and the Padres way out of it. It's crazy how things have really taken a turn in the National League wild card race, because it has been a wild card race. And you look at the American League, it's more normal. I mean, it's, the Blue Jays, the Astros, the Rays. And then you have the Mariners on the outside looking in. Red Sox and the Yankees don't have much of a chance, as we all know. So it's more predictable there. But if you would have told me the National League wild card would have been the Phillies, Giants, and Marlins, I would have believed you with the Phillies, because I like the Phillies a lot. I think the Phillies are a very good team. I think they're well coached with Rob Thompson, very good manager. He took over last season after Girardi got fired middle of the year and took that team to a World Series. That is not easy to do. That locker room was reeling. The team was struggling. To come in middle of the season, to get those guys to buy into your message that quickly, and to get those guys to play better. Because, let's be honest here, the Phillies were playing bad with their same roster. Once Rob Thompson took over, that roster took over, and that roster took off. So you have to give a lot of credit to him. And you got to give a lot of credit to the front office. They recognize needs in the offseason in the bullpen. They went on and brought some guys in. Craig Kimbrell's been a very good acquisition for them. They recognize the need in this rotation. They added Michael Lorenzen. You saw what he could do last night. You like where their lineup currently sits with Harper. I mean, the guy rolls out of bed and hits 300. Let's just be honest here. I mean, that's just the way it is. Bryson Stott's enjoying a career year. Nick Castellanos has had a very good bounce-back season. You're really kind of just waiting on Trey Turner, if it's ever going to happen, to just explode. Because if Trey Turner explodes offensively and defensively, he hasn't been very good on the defensive side of the baseball, which is rare for him. I mean, he's a very good player, and he hasn't been right on either side. If he gets right, this is a dominant lineup. I mean, you got Real Muto at the catcher spot, which you like a lot. Brandon Marsh, who's hurt right now, so you don't even have him in the lineup, and they're putting up all these runs. A lot to like with this Phillies team. There is. And I'm not just saying that. I talked about that on Monday. I'm not just saying that because of the Lorenzen no-hitter last night. I talked about that on Monday when I talked about Trey Turner, how good this Phillies team is. I mean, they've got a good team. They've got a good balance of power. And they've got a good balance of contact. They've got a couple guys that can hit over 300. They got a 5-tool player in Bryce Harper. We all know what he is. He's one of the best players in baseball. You've got Bryson Stott hitting over 300, and you got your pop. Harper brings your pop. Nick Castellanos brings pop. I mean, Klaus Schwarber is all that guy provides his home runs. He's at 30. Alec Boehm provides, not a huge home run guy, more of a contact guy. Hits doubles, but has 73 ribbies. Good with runners in scoring position. It's a very complete lineup, 1 through 9. It is. And looking back last night, taking a look at Lorenzen's no-hitter, taking a look at the lineup, taking a look at this team further, there's a really good chance the Phillies end up in the World Series again this year, because I think they're a better team this year than they were last year. Because their bullpen in the rotation, I think, is better than where they were last season, especially their bullpen. Bullpen's still not dominant, but it's a lot better than where they currently stood. Like last year, their bullpen was brutal. They made strides to improve it. Their rotation, if Lorenzen's not going to go out there and throw no-hitters all the time. The guy's a mid-3 ERA guy. I don't think he's going to. Maybe he does go out there and pitch to a 2.30 ERA as a Philly throughout the rest of August and into September and into October, and maybe he makes a name for himself and he finds the rest of his career he stays in Philly. Who knows? But, I mean, this is a guy that, if he continues to pitch the way he pitches, you like your 3-4 guys rolling up in a playoff game or a playoff series. You do. A lot better than you were last year. So, although at times last season in the postseason, their issue wasn't their pitching. It was their hitting. Because he had the no-hitter against them, which changed the trajectory of that series. So, postseason's a whole different beast. It's a whole different animal. But, they've got a soft spot on their schedule. You finish up tonight against the Nationals. Then you've got 3 against Minnesota. You do have the Blue Jays for 2, which is, tougher. Then you have the Phillies for 3 more. Then you have the Giants. And then you have the Cardinals and the Angels. Angels have been a disaster since the deadline. Cardinals aren't any good. Nationals aren't any good. Twins aren't very good. So you'll get the Blue Jays and Giants. But the rest of August is pretty comfortable for the Philadelphia Phillies coming up. So, all right. So that'll do it for the Michael Lorenzen no-hitter. Comments down below. What are your thoughts on the Phillies? I know we don't talk a ton of Phillies baseball in here, but they're better than the Yankees, I'll tell you that. Your thoughts on the Phillies, your thoughts on the no-hitter, and any other comments you might have. So we move on here to the hardwood as the New York Knicks made a move yesterday extending Josh Hart. Haven't gotten a lot of news in a while in the NBA world with with free agency, first wave of free agency really going by. You had all your big signings, and really since then, I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of news. There hasn't been a whole lot of reporting, but you did get some news yesterday as the New York Knicks and Josh Hart are finalizing a 4-year, $81 million extension to stay with the New York Knicks. And if you're a Knicks fan, you love this move for many reasons. Obviously, you brought him over at the deadline last year, was an excellent pickup at the deadline, was a big piece of why the New York Knicks, went into the postseason and won the round against Cleveland and then lost, obviously, to Miami, which, Miami ended up getting to the NBA Finals and ended up getting crushed by the Nuggets, which were the true beast of the NBA postseason last year. I don't think anybody was really getting past the Nuggets. They made the Lakers embarrass themselves, getting past the Lakers and then, obviously, doing their job against the Heat in 5. So there really wasn't any surprise there. Even if the Knicks would have gone past the Heat and then got past Boston and they got to the NBA Finals, they wouldn't have probably beat the Nuggets. The Nuggets were on fire. They were the team to beat. But it was a big step forward for the Knicks because you got to the postseason, and unlike the first year under Thibodeau, you got to the postseason with Atlanta and you lost. Now you get to the postseason here with the Knicks, your second time around after a really down year the year before, and you won a series. You won the first round series. You got to the second round. It didn't go as planned, obviously. You lose in 5 to a Miami team that ended up getting to the NBA Finals, as I mentioned. But now you looked for your roster. Now you look at this roster to continue to grow, continue to get better. Or I apologize. You lose in 6 to Miami. You look to continue to get better, continue to grow. And now you go to that second round series, and now you find a way to win that second round series. You have Jalen Brunson coming back for another year. You know, you've obviously now bringing back Josh Hart. You've still got a lot of pieces. You brought in a guy like a Dante DiVincenzo. I know a lot of people are iffy about Julius Randle. He's a guy that plays he's going to be out there 70-plus games. He's going to be available. His playoff success, his playoff numbers aren't great. He's a little inconsistent. There's, sometimes maybe a little lazy at times. I can understand the frustration with Julius Randle, but there's a lot of talent on this Knicks roster. You got the job done last year in the first round. Now it's all about taking that next step forward. And when you look at Josh Hart, he was, in my opinion, again, I'm a big Nets fan, so that's primarily the team I'm watching. But in the postseason, because the Nets got swept in the first round, I was watching a lot of Knicks. I was. And you look at that Knicks team, and obviously Jalen Brunson stands out as the main guy. It's obvious, right? He stands out as the main guy. He was the point guard. Knicks have needed a point guard for many years. They've tried guys like Derrick Rose. It never worked out. They've needed a point guard. The whole Frank Ntilikina situation. I don't want to go down paths that Knicks fans don't want to be down because it is a positive time to be a New York Knicks fan. You've had years and years and years of suffering since you got to the postseason last with Melo. It took a while to get back. You got back, lost to Atlanta, had the whole Trae Young in the Garden, with the whole, putting the finger over his mouth or the shush in the crowd, whatever. You had all that, but you were able to get a series win last year. So there's been a lot. So I don't want to go down bad paths with Knicks fans. But when you look at the team last year, it was obviously led by Jalen Brunson, who was the big offseason acquisition. A lot of people thought, did you overpay for a Jalen Brunson? I didn't think so because they were in such a need with a point guard, and he was just entering the prime of his career, and now he's going to be a number one when he was a number 2 in Dallas. He's a guy that can be a true number 1 for a team, and you saw that last year with Jalen Brunson. He was the main guy. But I think there's a really good chance the Knicks don't get to the second round and aren't at least competitive in the second round if it wasn't for the deadline acquisition of Josh Hart. That's how big of a piece he was last year for the New York Knicks. He did so much. Just before you get on to what he can do when you get into his ability to facilitate, his ability to get to the rim, his scoring ability last year, his ability to score at a high clip, which you really didn't see much in his career, but you saw that last year. The shooting percentage in 25 games with the New York Knicks last season jumped from 50% in 51 games with the Trailblazers to 58.6% in the 25 games he played with the Knicks in the regular season. That's how good he was. But before you get into all that, before you get into his actually on-court ability and the more the nitty-gritty of his game, the energy that he provided was a massive, massive boost off the bench. Massive boost for that second unit. He provided so much energy. And you look at a lot of the teams that go on deep and win games and go deep into the playoffs, they usually have a lot of those guys on their second unit. They're not going to put up 25 a night. That's not what they're there to do. They could put up 10, 11 a night, give you 25, 30 minutes, give you an energy boost, give you some defense, give you some scoring, just give you a little bit of a boost to the second rotation. That's all you can ask for. And that's exactly why Josh Hart's getting paid 4-year, $81 million, because he did everything and some for the New York Knicks last season. Another Villanova guy. They bring in DiVincenzo. They've already got Jalen Brunson. Josh Hart's another guy from Villanova. He was a part of that 2016 NCAA championship team, which obviously Brunson and DiVincenzo were all a part of the year they beat North Carolina. So you bring him back. The Knicks are basically the New York It's basically the Villanova Knicks. I mean, that's really what it is. Or the New York Wildcats. Whatever you want to call them. But again, very good at the rim. Good finisher at the rim. Could facilitate. His shooting ability, as I mentioned, he's a 50% clip guy. Like I showed, 51 games with Trailblazers before going over the deadline last year was a 50% clip guy. But that shooting ability especially jumped when he got to the Knicks. I mean, shooting 58% is a huge, huge deal, especially for a guy coming off the bench. That really kind of rounded out his offensive game because you knew, again, the facilitating and you knew what he could do at the rim. But the shooting has always been, it's been all right. Solid rebounder, even though he's undersized, but he's a solid rebounder for his size. He does a lot. Defensively, offensively, rebounding, physicality, energy. You love this move if you're the New York Knicks. And him and Emmanuel Quickley formed one of the best bench pairings in the NBA, formed one of the best second units in the NBA last year, especially in the postseason with what they were able to do. And two guys in Emmanuel Quickley, that's obviously still very young. And Josh Hart is only 28. And he's been in the league since 2017, where he spent some time with the Lakers for 3 years, was in with the Pelicans for 3 years, was with the Trailblazers for about a year and a half, and then obviously spent the last 25 games of the regular season with the New York Knicks last year after the deadline. And when you look at some of his game logs in the postseason and what he was able to do, I mean, I go back to the Cleveland series. I mean, there was a couple games in that Cleveland series. I go back to game 1. He shot 8 of 11, 72% from the field, put up 17 points and 10 rebounds. That's a double-double. I mean, for a guy his size, I mean, he's 6'4". He's not 6'8", 6'9". He's an undersized rebounder. For him to be able to go up there, put up 17 and 10 in his first playoff game as a New York Knick in this market was huge. That's not something you see every day. As much, again, you talk a lot about Jalen Brunson. But when you look back at this Knicks team, a big reason why they had the success they did, especially down the stretch, was Josh Hart. I don't know if, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have won against the Cavs in the first round if it wasn't for Josh Hart, but I mean, Josh Hart had some huge games. I mean, he had, 17, 13, 19 were his highest scoring games. He had 12 rebounds in the final game of that series where, again, it was game 5. He didn't have a huge night offensively. I think he shot looking at the game lines, 2 of 6. But he put up 12 boards. 12 boards to put up that much as an undersized rebound and still be able to go out there and put up 11.6 points. I mean, he put up 7.8 boards per game in that Cavs series. He averaged 11 and 7. You can round it up to 8. 11 and 8 in those 5 games against Cleveland. Off the bench, him and Quickley. And now if you're a Knicks fan, a lot of them, I'm sure you would like to see Quickley next to lock up that second unit of the future. One thing about this Knicks team, though, that you really like is their depth. And you really don't know where this team would be without depth. They are a complete rotation. They are a complete 15-man rotation. There's a lot to like up and down. From Brunson down to deep in that bench, down to guys like Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickley. There is a lot to like from this Knicks team up and down. A very complete roster. And, bringing back Josh Hart's obviously big. So, nice move there for the Knicks. Look, I know there's a lot of people that are still wondering, if the Knicks are going to make a big splash or, maybe at the deadline they'll make a big splash. They're probably going to roll with what they have. Is that good enough? It's certainly a good question. I mean, it's certainly questions that you do want to ask. Like, are they missing a true star outside of Brunson? Do you really trust Julius Randle to be a number 2 alongside Brunson, or do they need to bring in a guy like just putting a name out there, a Zach LaVine, to go out there? I don't know if I'd go out there and bring in a Paul George just because of the age and his injuries and his games played recently. He's not reliable. But do you go out there and bring in a Zach LaVine? Chicago, the Bulls are a train wreck. Do you go out there and do that? How else do the Knicks approach this? Because I understand Knicks fans' concern. Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson aren't good enough. Not Jalen Brunson's very good, but do you need somebody outside? You need somebody other than Randle to pair with Brunson. Brunson needs somebody else. because Randall's iffy. He'll play every game. He'll play 70-plus games. He's reliable. He did get hurt last year in the postseason a little bit with the ankle, and he had to deal with it and had to play through it, and wasn't the same. But his postseason numbers aren't great. Some of the big spots doesn't always come up. A little inconsistent. Just, you'd rather, Zach LaVine's better than a Julius Randle. So do you go after a guy like that? It'll be interesting to see how the Knicks continue to approach this. I don't expect anything major. I think if something would have happened, it would have happened by now. Because October's coming. Right around the corner. October will be here, and that's when the season starts. So it'll be interesting. But hit me up in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on these moves? Or this move, I should say, for the New York Knicks as they extend Josh Hart on a 4-year, $81 million extension. And do we see an extension coming up next for Emmanuel Quickly coming off the bench at the point guard spot? All right, so that'll do it for the podcast here today. Tomorrow, I will be live talking all things New York Jets. So this finishes up the week in terms of videos or in terms of podcast videos. Tomorrow, I will be doing a live stream. So I will have content up tomorrow. It'll be a live stream probably about around 10, 11. I'd probably do 11-ish. I did 11 Eastern. I did it on last week. On Wednesday of last week, I did 11 Eastern. I'll be answering your questions, taking your calls. We'll go for about an hour or so, talking all things New York Jets. I plan on doing weekly Jets live streams. And then once the season starts, I plan on doing live streams every Wednesday during the season, talking all things Jets. So that'll be up tomorrow. So stay tuned for the live stream tomorrow. And no Yankees or Mets tonight, so no suffering for either fan base. Enjoy your night. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you all back here tomorrow, 11 Eastern, for a New York Jets live stream, taking your comments, taking your calls for about an hour, talking all things New York Jets, recapping the joint practice yesterday. No joint practice today because of the weather, just Jets practicing. So we'll also have takeaways from that. We will also preview the Jets-Panthers preseason game on Saturday. I'll have a preview up on my In the Trench with Gang Green podcast on Friday, tomorrow, previewing Saturday's matchup. So a lot of content coming your way over these next couple days. As always, I will see you all back here tomorrow on a live stream. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.